Thank you all for joining us for the Vocabulary Advantage with Carla O'Brien. And we do have several members of the South Carolina Reading League here, myself and then Melanie Hooper, the president. So thank you all for being with us today. I want to introduce Carla O'Brien before she gets started. She is a series certified national presenter and trainer on dyslexia and best practices in structured literacy instruction. She's the executive director of professional development for Slant System, and her mission is to equip teachers with the knowledge and skill set to reach every student, especially those who struggle to learn to read. She has trained and certified hundreds of teachers across the country in the past several years in the Slant System Orton Gillingham approach. She takes great pride in sharing her passion and practices that she has successfully used with her own students to help close the literacy gap, allowing them to access their education and ensure a bright future. So we are very excited to hear Carla speak about this topic. This um, Our series this year for the Reading League has been focusing on the upper strands of the reading rope. So this is going to fit exactly into our focus. So thank you, Carla, and we are excited to hear the information that you are bringing to us today.
Thank you, Keegan, and thank you, Melanie. I am honored to be here today on this beautiful Saturday morning, and thank you all for taking your time out to be here to listen and to grow. And that truly is so meaningful coming from a not only a teacher but also a parent that you are all here to learn to better yourself for your students. I love this topic of vocabulary because myself, growing up, I was a struggling reader, not in the word reading department, but in the language department. And so this teaching about vocabulary and immersing myself into this topic as an adult has really, I have noticed improvements in myself, even as an adult reader, just learning about this. So I love to present on this topic. So I know Keegan, just introduce myself, I do want to kind of just share a little bit of my background as well before we get started. My experience is in kindergarten through eighth grade. I've served both as an administrator as well as a special education teacher in a self-contained setting, as well as in as a resource teacher where I was pulling students out, supporting them in their classrooms. And that is where I was so fortunate enough to be offered to go through a certification at Orton Gillingham structured literacy certification. Specifically, it was with Slant System, but it really truly changed me. And I know, for so many that do go through some sort of that type of training, it is so transformative for you as a professional. Those are my five children. I have one autism. So this also is his area, right? He's a good word reader. That language strand of that rope is very difficult for him. And then I have Connor here. He's in third grade. He's my struggling word reader. So he is fortunate enough to be getting what he needs at school. So I'm super proud of that. So that's a little bit of my background. And during the day, I have like an amazing job of working with teachers like all of you. I always like to start in the words of Anita Archer, affirm, remind, expand. You come to these webinars, these seminars, and sometimes that knowledge that you are hearing about or the skills that you're learning about affirms what you already know and what you already do. And that is awesome, right? To be validated that your practices are exactly what they need to be. Sometimes you're reminded, right? You maybe have learned this and it needs, you're reminded like, oh yeah, I probably should go back and do something like that. And sometimes your knowledge is expanded. And I hope to do all three of these things with you today because I think that is very important. So just take a moment and look at the words on the screen here in front of you and try to read those words. If you're a good word reader, even if some of these words you've never seen before, might be easy for you to read. And as you're reading, maybe think about what that text means. Does anybody know what this actually says? What it means? We can read those words, but there's a lot of words in there that are likely not accessible because we don't know the meaning of it. But we also need something else. We need background knowledge too, right? Which is very different from knowledge of vocabulary. You have to have knowledge of that topic, but you also have to have knowledge of word meaning. Many of these multisyllabic words, right, are appearing in text, even beginning in third grade for many students and carries on through high school. So as Keegan said, you all are working with the top strand of the rope. And so here we are, right? That background knowledge and that vocabulary. We can't have any one of those weak. Otherwise, it does affect that overall outcome of producing a skilled reader that is able to interact with the text, be able to read the words, and gain meaning from what they are learning. So today, as we talk about these things, I want you to, kind of keep that in mind, right? We need to um, simultaneously weave all of these components together when we are working with our students. And I love the connection between that reading rope and this simple view of reading, where reading comprehension is truly the outcome of the interaction of decoding and language comprehension, right? If your language comprehension is weak and we put this into a mathematical equation, right, and even with a strong decoding, your reading comprehension is going to be compromised. And likewise, the other way around, right? You could have a good, strong language comprehender, a weak decoder, and that reading comprehension is going to be compromised as well. And I think this is always very important when we look at this simple view of reading is when you're sitting down at, a table and you're looking at data for your students and you've got that overall reading comprehension score from some sort of of an assessment, right? Maybe some sort of benchmark assessment. And you say, oh, well, it looks like their reading comprehension, then we need to work on reading comprehension strategies. But we got to dig deeper, right? Because we need to determine which strand of that rope is weak. So when we think about what's happening in the brain, I always like to start with this because I think it's important as we are teaching and working with students that we do think about what's going on in our students' brains and also talking to them about it, right? Our students who are learning, they're in the emergent stages of reading. They are working on building their phonological processor, right? And through phonemic awareness exercises, through oral activities. And we are then teaching them those letter sound correspondences, right? Then we bring in that sound symbol association. Now we're working this next part of the brain. And those two areas of our brain work really well simultaneously when we are giving good, direct, explicit instruction in the code of English language. And we want to see this developed, really well developed by second grade. And when that happens and over time and we practice reading and practice attaching those sounds to symbols and we're reading words, one day those words get housed back here in our orthographic processor for automatic retrieval, right? That process we take from speech to print, right? And automatic word reading is orthographic process is orthographic mapping, right? Termed by Dr. Linnea Airy. We have this next area of our brain right here, right? This is our responsible for language comprehension. This is our context and meaning processor. We have to also be developing this area as well simultaneously while this is all happening, right? So as students are learning words, right? They're learning to read those words. We have to also be making sure that they understand the meaning of those words, right? And so we can build that meaning processor through intentional vocabulary instruction. But then there is also this context processor, right? We have words that have many, many meanings. Our brains are so amazing, right? Once you have the knowledge of multiple meanings of words, your brain can automatically pull out the meaning instantly based upon the context of how it is used in a sentence. So let me do a little demonstration here. Oh, and before I do that, I just want to mention that we really want to see this really typically developed around fourth grade and beyond into adulthood, right? Even as you grow, you gain new knowledge of words. It all continues, right? We never stop growing our brain in these areas and these processors. So those areas that I just showed you are the those four processors in our brain. And this is an image from Dr. Mark Seidenberg and McClellan of the four-part processing model. So I always thought it looks kind of upside down, right? And I think this is like your base, right? You need a good foundation first in good phonemic awareness, right? To build that phonological processor, good phonics instruction, to build that orthographic processor, right? So all of these work well together. Over time, right, our students also develop their vocabulary through meaning. They build their fluency is happening at the same time simultaneously as you move up here. And that context processor, right, is that next area of the brain where we have to teach those multiple meanings. So I want you to think right now, you see the word band on there that can have multiple meanings, right? And without the context of the sentence, you don't know which definition is being referenced. So listen to the word ball. Okay, when I say the word ball, think about what I might be thinking about. I'm going to bet that your first thought is that it is that round object that you use to play a game with, right? A sphere, a ball. But if I said you can go to a ball, you're not thinking about that anymore. Your brain is probably moving to like a dance or a formal party. Or you can have a ball, right? Now the meaning shifts to having fun. But without the context of that sentence, your brain doesn't know which meaning to pull. But instantly you did once I used it in context. So if you are able to do that, you have a very well developed, your context and meaning processor are very well developed. Now, I want you to also be thinking about, our students who are coming in with um, good oral language from the home, right? As kindergartners, they have lived in a home that has done a lot of talking, right? I have a lot of talking happening in my house with five children. So, but there's going to be students that are coming in, right, with different levels of oral language. And so you also might have some English language learners coming in, right? And again, think about what level of language they're coming in with. So our students are all coming in at a different, with these different levels of their processors being built. So as we talk about vocabulary, it's important we think about these four processors in our brain. So the first part, right, is to make sure that we are working on integrating this phonological processor, even when we are teaching word meaning, right? We want students to be able to attend to the sounds within the words, right? So we're going to actually point out those sounds, have them be identifying the sounds, feeling what is happening within their mouth, repeating that word so that we know they heard correctly, right? And then that orthographic processor, right? Now we have shown them what the word looks like, right? We've pointed out all of the graphemes and the phonemes and the correspondences, the letter sound correspondences within the word. Maybe there's parts of the word that look familiar or are not, right? We're going to really be explicit in not only the meanings of the words, but every part of that word, right? And then we're going to sound out the word for the student, show them how to write it, and have them do the same, right? So for example, the word band has predictable patterns, right? So we would point out the b, a, and band. We talk about that. And then as we develop that meaning and context processor, right, we're going to give student-friendly definitions. We're going to connect it to some sort of a visual or a metaphor, and then have the student teach that, right? Teach it back to a friend or to you in their own words so that we know that you know that they understood that meaning. And then as far as the context processor, now we're going to put it within the context of sentences. So all of those things must be happening simultaneously when we do vocabulary instruction. So there is, the National Reading Panel did uh, identify these different areas of teaching that were based upon the research and showed profitable gains. Intentional vocabulary teaching, right? So this is one that is facilitated by a routine, right? We are looking at what we are working with the text that we have with our students or topics that are being taught within the class, and we are very intentionally teaching specific words to those students through a routine. That would be the intentional vocabulary teaching. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself on the slides here. And then we have word consciousness, right? So this is where we are fostering that awareness and interest of words to students, making them look at words, think about words. And this is where I have developed as an adult to really, I hear words and I stop and I think about the parts within a word and how that connects to other words with meaning. So we want to, as we talk today, these are the two areas that I'm really going to focus on today with you and some strategies. But we also have these other areas. Multiple context exposure was also supported by research where the student not only learns the word, learns how to interact with the word, but we continue to utilize that word in multiple ways and different exposures and different contexts within, their school day. So it's not just learning a word and moving on, but we are going to continue to use that word so that they continue to build that exposure. Restructuring strategies in various ways, right? So doing different activities, with the word and making sure that engagement with the word is happening, right? Again, we don't just teach it and move on, but we're going to work with that word. We're going to, kind of have fun with it, through games and various exercises. And then the incidental vocabulary teaching. This is one where, you're doing a read aloud with a student, right? And a word comes along and you have to, in the moment, right, have to provide a definition of that word. So this just kind of happens, as your days go on and you identify words in the moment that the student might need to know to understand what it is that they are working on. And this really, all of these things should be happening on a daily basis. I just want to talk about what happens with our struggling readers, right? If we aren't exposing them to these words. Our students, especially those with dyslexia, one of the outcomes of dyslexia is reduced reading experience. And because of that, right, they tend to fall behind, even if they have good language comprehension. They will tend to fall behind if they are not reading the same text that their peers are. They're not being exposed to the same vocabulary and level of a robust vocabulary that their peers are. And so we have to be able to fill that gap for these students. So the Matthew effect is basically the advantaged become more advantaged over time and the disadvantaged more disadvantage over time. It's where that gap, right? That gap continues to widen for our struggling readers, or even those students that are coming in with poor oral language, right? So they're not coming in, with a lot of knowledge of words. So, assistive technology can be a great tool, right, for these students. But what we do know is that what is really agreed upon is that 2 words per day or 10 words per week can be directly taught to students. So when you add that up, right, 360 to 400 new word roots or word families per school year. And the oral vocabulary of 3-year-olds from advantaged homes is going to be 5 times larger than those from disadvantaged homes. Okay, so that could be, due to socioeconomic reasons. It could be due to, just not having a lot of language within the home. Okay, and because of that, right, we must accelerate the vocabulary acquisition for those students specifically. So we have to really make vocabulary a priority for these students. Because these students are going to need about double, right? 3 to 4 new words per day than our typically developing students. So just something to keep in mind, right? So there's so many words out there. How do you decide what words to teach, right? So first, I cannot do this without talking about these tiered words. Isabel Beck in her book, Bringing Words to Life, awesome book, by the way, has many, many great suggestions and strategies for vocabulary instruction. But our tier one words are those basic, commonly used words that we use in everyday spoken language. These are those words that our students are coming into school already knowing, right? If they are coming from a native English speaking home. Now, if they are not, right, these tier one words might need to be directly taught to some of our English language learners, right? But in general, our native English speakers don't need to be retaught these words. These are not direct instruction words. Now, these tier two words right here, these are those academic language words, right? These are those words that we will find in directions when a student has to do some sort of an activity, and there's, words that say like evaluate or compare and contrast, right? That they may not know what that means. We have to teach that, right? And then we've got these tier three words up here, which are very domain specific. These are going to be really specific to those subjects of, science words and social studies words, maybe even medical terminology, right? Like we sometimes, you get a medical record back and we don't know what all those words are. Those are tier three words for us that we have to really dig deeper into the meaning of. But we really want to make sure that these tier two words are words that we are making sure that we teach our students, because sometimes, your student might just not know might be able to do an assignment, but maybe they didn't do it right because they didn't understand what they were being asked to do, right? So again, these tier one words may be words that you do need to directly teach to some students, right? Okay, so now how do we choose, right? So we think about these three things. One, how useful is the word? Is this a word that the student is going to be able to use and continue to use, right? Beyond that moment that you're teaching it to them. Are they going to be able to relate that word to other areas or other words that they know in other subjects that they are learning? And then what does the word contribute to the text or situation? So is this a word that is important for understanding the meaning of what it is that they are reading, especially the context, right? So how useful is the word? How relatable is the word? And what contribution does the word have to other areas? So I like to have a plan, right? When I'm in sitting down and I'm planning my instruction, and we're doing our lessons, but I am pulling words, right? Ahead of time. Always read what you're presenting to the student before. So my intentional vocabulary teaching follows a routine, right? So step one, we're going to say the word, we're going to talk about the word, we're going to again, remember those processors within the brain, right? We're going to talk about the sounds within the word, how the word is spelled. We're going to model reading the word. We're going to give a student-friendly definition of the word. And then we're going to have the student, tell us that definition back or teach it to a friend. And then we're going to talk about using that word within a sentence. I give the student some words, the student creates some words. So there is definite interaction going on beyond just this is the word and this is the meaning. Okay, lots happening here. Once you have this filled out, right? You have this planner filled out and you encounter this story again, maybe next year, you've got your work done for you. I love to be able to like get everything done ahead of time and have that to be referenced later on. So there is this planner for you. So let's just take a look. Okay, if we were to present this does come from the vocabulary handbook from CORE. Let's just take a look at this right here. Take a second and read it and pull out 3 words you might want to teach based upon how useful is the word, what is its contribution, and how you can relate it to other things. Okay. So I'm wondering if anybody pulled out this word, endangered. I see Keegan shaking her head. Yeah. Abundant and imbalance, right? Okay, so I would want to utilize that tool, right? We were going to talk about the word endangered. Let's take a look at the word endangered. Within this word, I noticed this word danger here, right? Which I might be able to relate to already, knowledge they already know, right? ed, right? We've got a suffix here. This is past tense, right? And then we have a prefix here, right? So, this word endangered also kind of sounds like in danger, right? We can talk about it. We'll give a student-friendly definition, use it in context, right? And interact with that word. And I would do the same with these other words. So that is that intentional vocabulary teaching. But now, what if you're working with text that does not have a lot of robust vocabulary, right? This is decodable text, right? It might look familiar if you're working with emergent readers. And um, oftentimes there's going to be maybe some unconventional uses of words within here. So for example, let me just take a look at this word right here, bit, right? It is a bit of a pit. Okay, so bit in the context here means a small piece of something, right? There's another meaning, right? The past tense of bite, right? Like I got bit by the cat, all right? But this is a word I'm going to have to intentionally pull out because of the contribution, right? Of the meaning in the text. But if I wanted to introduce the students to not just this level of vocabulary, but I'm going to bring higher level vocabulary. You're going to think about what is a common theme within here? What is the mood, the plot, right? Within this text, the cat is being, is constantly chasing the rat, biting the rat, and so I would introduce this word as feisty, right? So now I am going beyond that basic level, more tier one level words, up to a tier two within this context here. And so I would teach them, in this story, the cat is being very feisty. I would go through the same process, right? I would come up with a student-friendly definition. I would talk about the word, talk about the spelling of this word feisty, right? And then I would create some sentences, and have the student interact with the word. Okay. So just if you are working with low level text, always also understand, right? Our students can handle a little, can handle more, right? We can build that oral language beyond the level of text that they are reading. So what I really like, this next tool that I'm going to show you for this same, developing a routine is this possum. Perhaps you've heard of this before. This comes from Dr. Marianne Wolf. And it stands for, first, once we have the word, right, we talk about the phonology. How does it sound? What are the sounds within the word? So we are connecting to our phonological processor, building that phonological processor. Orthography, how is it spelled, right? Thinking about our brain. Now the sound spelling correspondence here. Is it a certain syllable type? Is there a certain spelling rule? Anything that we can notice about how that word is spelled. And then what is its function, the syntax of the word? And notice I didn't use the words of noun, adjective, vocabulary, but really what is the function of the word? Is it an action? Is it a describing word? And then now, in the second S is semantics. So now we're getting into the definition. Again, student-friendly definition, and maybe even a picture associated with it, right? The student can either draw a picture or they can cut one out, right? Find one on Google search. And then understanding, where have I heard this, right? This is where the student would use this in the context of a sentence, right? And then the final one is morphology. What are the word parts? Is there a prefix? Is there a base? Well, there should be a base word. Is there a suffix, right, attached to this word? Or maybe not. So let's take a look at that word feisty, right? How is it spelled? Well, the sounds in the word feisty, feisty. There's a vowel team in there. Oh, even there's a Y at the end that sounds like a vowel, right? So we'll talk about all of those things. Anytime we can make some interaction with the word, I feel like it helps it really stick to the student. This is a describing word. When someone argues a lot, they are feisty, right? And here's my picture. My brother gets feisty when he doesn't get his way, right? And the word feisty, right, alone holds meaning, okay? Now, if we have a multisyllabic word, this is just a different word, right? Another one, an action to turn something in, hand it over. When I handed my paper, I submitted it to my teacher. Now we have the base word of mit, right? Means to send and sub under. Now, when we have words like this, right? It's not oftentimes the literal definition. We don't send something under, but send it over, send it away, send it to somebody else when we submit something. You can even talk about adding suffixes. You could submitting, submitted. We could talk about how we can even change that word by adding more morphemes. So I really love that tool. And you all will be receiving handouts, and all of this will be provided to you as well. So now let's talk about, as we just introduced that last part, the morphemes. This is one of my favorite topics, is talking about morphology. So morphemes, the smallest unit of meaning within a word, right? So this can be taught very early on, right? The minute we start introducing a suffix s to a word, or the ing and the ed suffixes to words, we are introducing our students to morphology. So the smallest unit of meanings within words, and it gives our students keys to understanding connections between many, many words that they will encounter both in their education and in life. And when we can do that, right, this explicit instruction can be a very powerful tool for our students. So we're going to go through working with a word matrix. Now that second research-based strategy is creating word consciousness. So here is how I love to create word consciousness. And this has really sparked a lot of curiosity to me as an adult, where I said I go around and I think about the word parts within words and how it's connected to other words. So what I love about building a word matrix is that you as their teacher can create this based upon what your students know. So if your students only know 3 suffixes, right, you're only going to include those 3 suffixes in your matrix. And it's going to be as simple or complex as you make it. So here we have a very simple one, right? Trust, right? Could be considered a tier 1 level word, maybe tier 2. But and now we have over here, and this is, of Anglo-Saxon origin, right? And then here we have rupt, right? This is a Latin root word base. And then we've got lots of prefixes and suffixes, and there's even so much more than that, right? But so you can see, we can change the complexity of this word matrix. So I'm going to teach you how to build this word matrix, but let me talk just a little bit first. I believe that it is very powerful to introduce a word matrix to a student very early on. So they get used to understanding the matrix, but it really helps them to see the connection between the base words and those affixes, those prefixes, the suffixes. So a couple things your student is going to need to know, right, before this is that there are some suffixing rules. There's going to be some spelling changes that may occur when you add a suffix to a word. So there's a couple things they need to know first. So just be mindful that if you're using this, that you choose words based upon what your student has learned. If they've learned those suffixing rules. So here's a word play, right? So we would build a word some. So play, plus ed is rewritten as PLAYED, played, right? And the same thing for all these others. Now, this is a word that does not require any changes to spelling when you add the suffix on here. And this matrix maker comes from this website. I do have a list of resources and we'll show you exactly where to go. But if you just Google mini matrix maker, you will find this tool. So the first step in building a word matrix, again, you need to make sure that they have learned some suffixing rules. All right, so the 1+1+1 doubling rule, right? When you the one syllable word, one short vowel, and followed by one consonant, and the suffix begins with a so suffix begins with a vowel, you double that final consonant, right? Or the silent E, when you drop the E and you add a vowel suffix, and the Y to I rule, right? So if the what is preceding the Y is a consonant, right? We are going to just add on the word. I'm sorry, and we're going to add the suffix, right? Or the Y changes to I when you add that vowel suffix. All right, so let's just take a look here. The first thing you would do when you enter that base word so you're working with a word, right? And we want to enter that into a dictionary. We want to find out what is the definition of that word. And then, of course, we're going to discuss the meaning in student-friendly terms. And we're going to have the student brainstorm words related to that, right? The next thing we would do is you as the teacher would enter that base word into this tool called a word searcher. I'm going to show you that too. You're going to find related words. And then you're going to create these word sums and enter it and build that matrix. This is the cool part. And then the student is going to use that matrix to build many words, okay, while they're also being conscious of spelling and the meaning that happens when they add on those suffixes. So let's start with this first word. The first word is think, right? Think. It's a free base, meaning it can stand alone. We don't need to add a prefix or a suffix on it to have it an actual word. It alone is a word, meaning to express gratitude. And we know this because we could look it up in the dictionary, would validate. This is Edym Online. This is directly from Edym Online. And then we're going to talk about that, right? So let's think of some other words that is related to the word think. Thankful, thanking, thankfulness, thankfully, okay? And then we go into this word searcher tool. Again, this is from that same website where the matrix maker is. And again, if you just Google this word searcher tool, you would find it. You enter the letter strings that you are looking for, right? THANK into this area, and you click go, and it brings up all the words that have that letter string in it, okay? So here are all my words related to it. And now you got to be careful, right? Because sometimes it looks for the letter strings, which may not always be connected to the meaning of what you were looking for. Just make sure that it is connected in meaning. Okay, so those all are. So then I would go to the matrix maker and I would put in my word sums. Think plus S, think plus ing. Okay, and it gives you all the directions for here. You put in your base with a capital, so it knows that that's your base, and the denotation. So if you want to put the definition of the word here, you can. If not, you don't have to. And then you make your word sums, and then you click update, and then voila, you have a matrix. Pretty cool, right? So now when you look at this, right, the student can see all the different words you can make from that base. Now, the important thing here is to know is you cannot skip over columns. You move left to right. So here I could make this word sum thank plus ed, thank plus ing, thank plus less, thank plus s. Right, and here I've got my words. Now, as I go down here, I've got thank plus ful, thank plus fully. Okay, and now look at this. This explains the meaning why there's two L's in the word thankfully. If you didn't know, it's because there's an attachment of two different suffixes here. And then, so in thankfulness, right? So I like to introduce it early on because it teaches your students how to use the matrix, how it works and interacts with each other. So starting with those easy words, right? And then once they do that, right, there's this nice worksheet that the student can actually create those word sums and new words. Make sure that when they are adding, when they have that plus sign in there, they circle it so it's not mistaken for a T. So this is a pretty fun tool, right? Now, once you've taught them how to use the matrix with easier words, now you can move into Latin-based words, okay? So now you might want to teach words, no more of that academic language words. You can, the more that some of those content area words using a matrix, those tier 2 or tier 3 words. Just keep in mind, right, our Anglo-Saxon words are our everyday words, more tier 1 level words. Latin oftentimes is that academic language, and the Greek words are usually our tier 3 words that are more content specific. All right, so let's take a look at this. We're going to build a matrix for the base struct, S-T-R-U-C-T. It's a Latin bound base, meaning that it has to be attached to a prefix and or suffix in order to be a word. Okay, so it means to build. And I know this because just pretend that we entered it into a dictionary and we found out that struct means to build, right? So we're going to take that struct and we're going to enter it into that word searcher, and brings up 78 words that has that letter string within it. Now you got to, again, be careful that all of these words do have to do with build, right? Meaning to build. And they do. They do. So I'm just going to pull a couple of those words and I'm going to create some word sums. D plus con plus struct plus ION is rewritten as deconstruction, right? So you build that for your student. Now we've got a more complex matrix here. Again, moving left to right, just take a look and see what words you could build using that matrix. I do want to point out one, again, you have to, now this is a situation right here, this base word doesn't end with an E. It doesn't, it's not a one syllable word with one vowel followed by one consonant, right? So we don't have a doubling rule happening. It doesn't end with a Y. However, sometimes when you add your suffixes together, there will be a change. So if I go from structure to structural, right? You got to be conscious of the change here. We have an E, okay? We have a silent E. So we're going to drop that E and we're going to add that next vowel suffix. So we take that away. So that's going to, again, help with being, cognizant of the structure. It's funny that the word is structure of our words, especially where those conjunctions happen, where the joins are happening. Okay, so then the student on their form, now as you can see, he did not circle the S's, so it's a little confusing. But this was a student of mine that I was working with. He loved to do this. Every Friday we would do our word matrix, and he would come in. He's like, "Can we do that word puzzle?" Like, he loved this because he was a very poor speller. But all of a sudden, this helped him to realize that these big words are just a bunch of little parts put together. And in all of them, right, related in the meaning of to build, right? So if you instruct, you are, as a teacher, right, you instruct, what do you build? You build knowledge, right? So there's an essence of the meaning in a lot of this. Deconstructing, when you deconstruct something, you build, take away it, you break it down from being built, right? A structure, so anyways, a lot of knowledge can be gained through this for your students, for both meaning and for spelling and for reading. So it really supports everything here. So it's really, really fun tool. So we'll do one more. Okay, the base word is rupt. Rupt, again, is a Latin base, meaning to burst or break, and we would have looked that up in an online. This is just a different website here that you can look it up, to burst or break. One more place that I really like is membean.com/roots, and you put in rupt. You can click play, and it will read this story that has a whole bunch of words with rupt in it that mean to burst. It's kind of a fun little story. Your students can hear it in context in many different ways. They have the definition, then they have other words related, right, to that base word. So another really great tool to take your students to when you're teaching these. So then we would enter that RUPT into the word searcher, and we come up with 48 matches. And again, all of these have relation to bursting or breaking, right? Think about bankrupt. When you are bankrupt, you have basically broken you've broken the bank, right? When something erupts, like a volcano, it bursts with lava, right? So then we take the words, we put it into that mini matrix maker, and now we have a R matrix for rupt. And now again, we've got some understanding of that, all the vocabulary we can learn through this, but we also have a lot of explanations for spelling, like why does interrupt have two R's? Or why does corrupt have two R's? Right? And again, you're going to be conscious of any spelling changes that happen here. There are none in this situation. So then the student would go in and they would create their word sums and then their final word. I'll again talk about the meanings of those words. Lots of interaction happening here. And then you can have them put it on a tree, right? Like that understanding that, it is a Latin, the roots of that word are Latin, right? Meaning to burst or break, rupt, the meaning, all these different words, they can build their tree as they go. And then here, use the words within context. One more thing that I did find, this was from Dyslexia Associates. I thought this was a really neat activity, is actually having your students create a picture, right, of the meaning, and then within that, have some words that mean to burst or break. They actually have that picture of that meaning. And I think this is very, very interesting. This is from Unlocking Literacy. These 12 roots plus the Greek graphenology provide clues to meaning for more than 100,000 words, right? So we can be very intentional in our vocabulary teaching, create word consciousness, utilizing some of these Latin roots, these Latin base words. You unlock a lot of meaning to words for your students, right? And these are going to be words your students are going to encounter as even if they're in third grade, even if they're in, third or fifth grade, right? They're going to encounter these words throughout their education as they get older. So I think that is pretty cool to, really think about it that way, right? We can unlock a lot of meaning. So as we close out here, just want to be mindful of your time here. Think about what are some things you are doing well with your vocabulary instruction. If there's anything today that you would want to put into practice on Monday to help your students make some connections, right, in real life and to what they are learning. And what you think you could incorporate into your instruction. So just take a moment. And then there are the matrix maker, the word searcher tool, Membean. These are all at an online linked here. Again, Google search will get you there as well. If you're very interested in more of the matrix and understanding, word parts and morphology, I highly suggest check out the work of Pete Bowers at his website, wordworkskingston.com, and learn about structured word inquiry. Very, very interesting. This is really what got me very in tune with words and wanting to learn more, but great place to go. These are some great resources, bringing words to life I referenced earlier on. The vocabulary handbook by Core has some great exercises and activities in there as well. And this book in the middle is a textbook. It's close to 1,000 pages long, but it has everything you want to know about basically about structured literacy and teaching literacy for students. So those are some great tools that I really love and would highly recommend. And I just want to say thank you. This has been wonderful to present to you all today. And feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions about any of this that we talked about today.
Well, thank you, Carla, and definitely going back to Dr. Archer's quote, affirm, remind, and
Yes.
expand. I feel like you definitely touched all of those words for us today, definitely to expand for me. So thank you for sharing all of the resources that you did with us today. I'm excited to try out that matrix maker, especially.
That's a fun one. Yeah, go around, play with it, and because again, you create it yourself, right? So however complex you want to make it is, like I say, you're in control of your own matrix.
So yeah, we will be sharing the recording and all of the resources from Carla, and I'm just going to put in the chat our events, the link for our events as well. Our next event will be in January, so please register for that. That will be another vocabulary a session on vocabulary and ELA standards from Angie Neal from the State Department. So I'm continuing to focus on the upper strands of the rope. But thank you all for joining us today, and we will be on here for a few minutes if you want to discuss anything that Carla said, or just have some discussion about any reading league topics. We are on here. So thank you all for joining us on this Saturday, and look for the email to be sent out with the recording and the resources. So thank
Thank
you all.
you.
Yeah, Carla, if you just want to send me all those, and we'll attach it. I'm going to stop the recording.